everyone, today I've got your Dark Phoenix movie review. It's the end to an era for the X-Men franchise. Did they go out with a bang, or just up in flames? So as far as the story goes, Simon Kinberg directs this final installment in the X-Men series, and it's all about Jean Grey, who's this character that is trying to discover her powers and see if she really is like a Phoenix, which some of those X-Men students dub her as. With this first mission that happens in outer space that the X-Men go on, and it turns out to be a disaster that actually I found to be visually stunning. I think all those space scenes just always impress me. And something happens to Jean Grey before they go back down to Earth, and well, they are deemed as heroes who wear that, classic yellow suit. And, at the end of the day, I felt like, okay, this movie is my number 2 least anticipated movie of the year, and I was still willing to go in with an open mind, but literally as soon as I saw this, right off the bat, I noticed that this movie feels like a 2-part storyline, where the first half of the film is all about, from the space scene to what they discover in space to what happens after they get home from space and something terrible happens. And then the second part of the movie is what becomes the catalyst of, what happened after this one terrible scene, and future actions and interactions with antagonists are sort of at stake here. Now, I feel like that's, partially a problem with the fact that this is how they chose to do this storyline, and it was already confusing because of some of the past X-Men movies have been going back in time, or they're going into the future, so the timeline sort of feels really screwed up and, out of loop with, where is exactly this present day. What I think I was most irritated about this movie was that they pretty much use the same exact plot from X-Men 3: The Last Stand throughout the movie, and it proves just how original this movie is, especially when you have this reenactment, or I guess this retelling of a scene where Jean Grey comes across the X-Men who go to her house, where she grew up, and things are just constantly changing left and right, so it gets really confusing. I mean, my mind was just completely blown at how, terrible this movie was, but it wasn't entirely terrible, so at least I'll give it that. As far as the casting goes, you've got Sophie Turner, who I feel like, she was a hit or miss for me when they first introduced her character in X-Men Apocalypse, and now seeing her here, I really feel like I didn't learn as much, or I didn't see as much improvement with the way that she created this younger version of Jean Grey. And I just, quite frankly, was not as impressed with her, as well as Jennifer Lawrence, who I feel like she's been kind of like the big name of this, prequel series for the X-Men movies. And yet, how she had to spend her last moments in this franchise as Mystique, I just feel like as soon as she starts spouting some SJW nonsense about having to rename the X-Men to X-Women because the ladies seem to be pulling the guys' asses out of the fire constantly, and I just felt like it was so unnecessary. I was like, I am so glad that you wanted to be done with playing this blue character. Jessica Chastain, who plays the sort of villain of this movie, who's this kind of like alien chick that reminds me of Lara Flynn Boyle's character from Men in Black 2, and I was like, okay, just that reference alone makes me dislike her character entirely, and I just felt like, how the heck are you going to be walking around in heels all day and still feel like you can pull off taking over the world, or taking over Jean Grey, or whatever else her motive was, because it was kind of ridiculous. And I at least enjoyed seeing the likes of James McAvoy and Michael Fassbender, who play Charles Xavier and Magneto respectively, except I have been seeing a lot of pictures where they compare the constant like age change that Magneto goes through, and just seeing what age he was supposed to be in X-Men The Last Stand versus this movie. I mean, I was like, wow, he must have gotten totally screwed up to get all that gray hair instantly. It must have been him playing chess. But either way, the rest of the cast, you know, they weren't as impressive. I mean, it was pretty much the same that I had seen. So they didn't really show a lot of character development or a lot of potential that they could have had in the future if they were planning to continue this franchise after this. But we all know what happens. So the things that I like about this movie is that while I wasn't exactly impressed with a lot that was going on, there were some cool action scenes and a battle and fight sequence, especially by the third act of the movie, that I thought all looked pretty cool. And I thought that they were executed nicely. However, when things were bad, I noticed that they were bad, and it sort of just bogged down my mood the entire time. So I didn't really like what I saw when something was bad. So unfortunately, the things that I didn't really like about this movie was that I started to get bored by the third act, even though there were some intense moments going on, but I felt like they were things that I had already seen before, and maybe sometimes not. I mean, like I said, they tried to change stuff around to not make it look like a rehash of X-Men The Last Stand, but also, no spoilers, why did it feel like it had an open end for this movie instead of it feeling like a true end to the series? So it made no sense to me whatsoever of what the heck they were planning and going on, and it defeats the entire purpose even after the Disney-Fox deal went through. So I guess we'll see what happens when Disney gets a hold of the X-Men and maybe they can be rebooted properly. So overall, I would say that Dark Phoenix was, you know, cool at times, but at the end of the day, it was a, you know, disappointment to me. So I am on the fence about recommending it to you guys. So if you liked it, good for you. If you didn't, also good for you. So I would give this 2.5 hearts on the heart rate scale. So let me know in the comments what you guys thought of Dark Phoenix. And as always, you guys can subscribe to my channel. I've got more movie reviews, movie updates coming every week for a Trail Thursday video. You guys can also like me on Facebook and follow me on Twitter. And I'll see you guys later.